All right, everybody, let's do it. Buckle up, because we're diving deep into some seriously cool stuff today. Human consciousness and how it's evolved through time.
Always a fascinating topic.
Tell me about it. We're going deep into John Ryan Haule's 4 Ages of Human Evolution to untangle this whole cosmic connection thing, how it's shifted over millennia.
Hall's work is a fantastic guide for this kind of exploration.
Totally agree. The guy's brilliant. It's like astral projection, channeling, everyone's buzzing about it now, but this stuff's been around, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's way older than what we often label as New Age. Hall does a brilliant job showing how these ideas have been around for ages.
So we're talking ancient civilizations just casually astral projecting like it's no big deal.
Well, maybe not exactly casual, but definitely a different understanding of what we might call cosmic consciousness. Hall paints the age of Taurus, that's 4400 BC to 2200 BC, as a time when this connection was fundamentally different.
Different how? We're already in deep, so lay it on me.
Think of a world where the lines between senses and imagination are blurry, intuition's king, and visions are like Tuesday news.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. So it was less about thinking things through and more about just knowing.
Exactly. It's less about logic, more about direct experience, that gut feeling, connection to something much, much bigger.
I feel like we've lost touch with that a bit, haven't we?
Right.
But is there like any actual proof this wasn't all just, ancient vibes?
It does sound wild, right? We
Right.
can't exactly hop in a time machine, but there are some really intriguing theories. Ever heard of Julian Jaynes and the bicameral mind?
Vaguely. Rings a bell. Remind me.
Jaynes theorized that early humans had this two-part consciousness, right? It's like one part of the brain, probably the right side, was all about processing info through images and intuition.
Interesting. Okay, I'm with you. So what about the other half?
Well, he thought the other side was busy interpreting those intuitive flashes, turning them into actions. It's a theory with its critics, for sure, but Hall suggests that this less analytical, more intuitive way of experiencing the world was totally dominant back then.
So we're talking about a direct line to something beyond us. Man, that is mind-blowing. But does Hall give us any real-world examples, like how this played out in the culture?
He does. Hall talks about this photographer, Lauren McIntyre, and his experience with the Mayaruna tribe deep in the Amazon. Think untouched by modern civilization, maybe a glimpse into our ancestors' way of life.
Okay, now you're talking my language. Tell me more about McIntyre and the Mayaruna. This is fascinating.
Imagine trying to chat without a shared language. That was McIntyre's life. But then he starts noticing these moments of, well, Hall calls it beaming, practically silent communication. It's like McIntyre's picking up on the Mayaruna's thoughts, especially the headman's, without a single word spoken.
Wait, hold up. Are we talking telepathy here? Like, do they have special powers or something?
Yeah. McIntyre described it as finding messages in his head, like they were being sent directly. It's super interesting, right? Like a real-world example of that bicameral mind in action, though the voice may have been another human's, not a god's. Of course, this is all based on McIntyre's experience, so.
One man's experience, sure, but still, wild. So Hall believes these ancient cultures, like the Mayaruna, are like living examples of the bicameral mind in action.
In a way, yeah. The Mayaruna even had this ritual. They'd burn down their whole village every morning and rebuild it nearby. It was symbolic, a return to pre-time, a way to reconnect with that cosmic consciousness.
Oh, burning down their homes every single day. Talk about a fresh start. But if this was such a blissful existence, so in tune with everything, why change? Why isn't everyone burning incense and beaming good vibes at each other these days?
Good question. And that leads us to the Age of Aries. Roughly 2200 BC to 1 AD, things get a whole lot more secular. Not complicated. Picture this. The agricultural revolution. Cities exploding in size, kings rising, wars breaking out, a completely different world.
Yeah, a whole lot more complicated. I can see how that would shake things up. Like, what happened to that cosmic connection during all of this?
Yeah.
It seems like life got a lot more, serious.
It's true. Things were changing fast. And to survive in this new world, you needed logic, strategy, a different kind of smarts.
So instead of relying on intuition and vibes, it was all about using your head to figure things out.
Exactly. This is where Hall points to the rise of the left brain, the analytical side.
Okay, so less about feeling that connection to something bigger and more about, using logic and reason to make sense of the world around us. But did we lose that cosmic consciousness completely?
It's not so much about losing it completely, but more like how that ancient wisdom was kept alive. Like this is when we see scriptures popping up.
Oh, interesting. You mean like the Bible, the Vedas, that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly those. They were attempts to solidify that knowledge, the knowledge that Hall argues used to be more directly accessible.
So instead of experiencing the voice of the gods firsthand, now it's more like we've got these texts saying, hey, we wrote down the instructions for you.
Yes. It's like humanity was trying to hold on to that fading connection to something bigger, making sense of it through stories and laws.
Makes you wonder if things had gone differently, would we still have that direct line? Okay, so much change happening. This is where we land in the Age of Pisces, right? Starting around 1 AD. What's going on with cosmic consciousness then?
You're picking up what Hall's putting down for sure. It's like this push and pull between logic and yearning for something more.
Like we evolved to deal with the practical, but that longing for something bigger never really went away.
And the Age of Pisces, well, it's where things get really interesting. This is when Gnosticism comes into play. And they're all about direct mystical experience as the way to reconnect.
Gnosticism. Okay, so we're talking about like a more mystical approach to spirituality.
Yes. And they called this direct experience gnosis. It's like their core thing, the path to connecting with the divine. What's super interesting is that Gnostics believe that this gnosis, this direct experience, it was for everyone. It wasn't limited to just priests or monks or whatever.
That's cool. That's cool. So everyone has the potential to tap into this higher consciousness according to Gnosticism.
Yeah.
I like it.
Right. And they even had this whole hierarchy of consciousness. At the bottom, you've got the flesh people, those who are totally focused on material stuff and sensory pleasures. Then there are the soul people who are starting to glimpse a deeper spiritual reality.
Okay, I think I might be a soul person then. I'm trying to be more spiritual, work in progress.
Yeah.
So who's at the top of this Gnostic hierarchy?
Right at the top, the spirit people. These folks, they've achieved gnosis. They fully understand their connection to the divine. They're like the masters of consciousness.
The masters. I love it. It's amazing to me how these ancient thinkers were already mapping out these different levels of awareness, ideas that are still relevant today.
Totally. And it makes you think about what we can learn from them. Did the Gnostics have any methods, for moving up those levels of consciousness?
Yeah, how do we get to the top of that ladder?
Yeah.
Do they have a secret handshake or something?
Well, not exactly a secret handshake, but they did have practices. And this is where we meet John Climacus. He's a 7th century monk who wrote a book called The Ladder of Divine Ascent.
Ooh, The Ladder of Divine Ascent. Okay, that title alone sounds intense, sign me up for a spiritual boot camp.
So this Climacus guy, was he all about putting those Gnostic ideas into action, giving people actual tools to reach a higher state of being?
Exactly, and the best part, he wasn't afraid to get practical, a little unorthodox even. Climacus, he lays out 30 steps or virtues to climb this ladder towards spiritual enlightenment. He believed that he couldn't just understand it intellectually, you had to actually feel that connection to the divine. Okay, so it's not enough to just read about it in a book, you have to live it. Feeling it, yeah, I get that. I'm all about experience over theory. So how did this Climacus guy teach people to climb this ladder? Was it meditation, chanting, special diets?
Well, he's got stories, like one about this monk Isidore struggling with arrogance. Climacus gave him this task, really humbling. He had to stand at the monastery gates, bow to everyone passing, and ask for their prayers.
Wait, what? Why? What was he supposed to be praying for?
He was supposed to tell everyone he was epileptic. Can you imagine?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that'll humble you real quick.
Yeah.
Did Isidore actually do it, asking for prayers like that?
He did. It forced him to confront his pride, connect with humility, something Climacus believed was huge for growth. And it worked. At the gate, Isidore realized his flaws, found some peace. But all this deep spiritual stuff, it's a far cry from what was going on by the end of the Age of Pisces with the Renaissance and everything.
That's true. We're talking about a complete 180, right? The Renaissance was all about celebrating life, the human form, nature, like a burst of creative energy. It really does feel like a whole different world, right? We went from contemplating the divine in a monastery to celebrating the human body in all its glory. Did those Renaissance folks just forget about cosmic consciousness altogether?
It's not about forgetting, more like a shift in focus. The Renaissance was all about exploring the physical world, human potential, think Michelangelo, Da Vinci. But there's this fascinating thing, right? Even then, amidst all that focus on the material, you have practices like alchemy trying to bridge the mystical and the scientific.
Alchemy. Now, that's something I've always found intriguing, magic disguised as science. Weren't those alchemists obsessed with turning lead into gold?
That was part of it, for sure, the transformation of matter. But it was about more than just metals. It was about transformation on a deeper level, both of matter and the self. Alchemists believed that by understanding the material world, you could unlock spiritual truths.
So it was like a way of finding the hidden connections between the physical and the spiritual.
Exactly. And what's really wild is that their experiments, their meticulous observations, those actually laid the groundwork for modern chemistry.
Wow. So alchemy, this blend of mystical beliefs and scientific inquiry, it actually helped shape the way we understand the world today. That's kind of mind-blowing.
It really is. But as we move further into the scientific age, figures like Lavoisier and Newton come along, and with them, a much more materialist worldview.
So are you saying that as science advanced, we kind of lost that sense of wonder, that connection to something bigger than ourselves? It's like the more we learned about the physical world, the less we paid attention to the spiritual one.
It's not that simple. It's more like a pendulum swing, right? Between direct experience, intuition, that connection to something vast and unknowable, and on the other side, logic, reason, the observable world.
It makes you wonder where we fit into all of this, doesn't it? Here we are in the 21st century, supposedly on the brink of the Age of Aquarius. Are we rediscovering cosmic consciousness after centuries of scientific materialism? The million-dollar question, right. Haule seems to think so, that we're on the verge of something big, tapping into a new level of awareness. But he's also careful to point out that just because something feels mystical or ancient doesn't automatically make it good or true.
True. It's like blindly following anything is a recipe for trouble. So how do we navigate this? How do we find that balance between the scientific and the spiritual, the logical and the intuitive?
By staying curious, by not being afraid to ask questions. We can honor both logic and intuition, right? We need critical thinking to sift through information and avoid getting swept up in every outlandish claim. But we also need to be open to the possibility that there's more to reality than we currently understand.
So instead of choosing sides, it's about finding that sweet spot where science and spirituality can coexist, maybe even complement each other. Man, that's a lot to unpack. What an incredible deep dive. I completely agree. It's these kinds of conversations, the ones that push us to think differently, that make exploring these ideas so fascinating. And who knows what we'll uncover as we continue to explore. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the evolution of cosmic consciousness. It's a journey that doesn't end here, and we're just starting to scratch the surface.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep those minds open and keep asking those big questions. And hey, maybe we'll find some answers along the way. Thanks for listening, everyone.